That's the plan anyway. Thanks very much. Great turnout to the first event. It's amazing how many people will turn up when you say free beer and pizza. So thanks for coming. Also, Gary mentioned the fire exits there. Hopefully we won't need them. Hopefully this won't blow up, but you never know. But my name is Philip Stafford, or that's in the professional world, Philly, most people know me as. I'm a front-end engineer here at Distill for the last 8 months. And Distill SEH is actually non-deal Daft and Adverts for joint venture. So when I was looking up how to introduce yourself in a presentation, because I've never actually given a presentation to this many people before, it said, make sure you tell them why you're a subject matter expert on the topic. I just like to say I'm not. I'm far from it. I've used BDD for 2.5 years in Paddy Power. We didn't use it here until I joined, so I'm trying to bang on the drum to get everyone to adopt it, because I find it's difficult work without it once you're used to it. So this very impressive firework is 8.5 billion euros blown up, and that was issued because of a bug. It was actually a self-destruct command, which would have been a great command to send to something to see that result. But the cost of that bug, like I said, was 8.5 billion dollars. It's the reason was the rocket before this, the Ariane 4, was working perfectly. So they used the same software in the newer rocket, and the engines were so powerful that they actually tried to inject a 64-bit number into a 16-bit space, which doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but it means this went off trajectory and boom, they had to issue a destruct sequence. So I was looking up some research for this presentation, and they reckon if you catch a bug in your requirement phase, it can cost you $100 to fix. If you catch that same bug in the testing phase after development, it can cost $1,500. And if you catch it in production, it can cost $10,000. So I don't know how much weight that carries, if it's true or not, but generally catching them before they even start is the best solution, which is why this BDD can be beneficial. So for this presentation, right, I want to give you an intended outcome of what this will give you, what BDD actually is. There's a man here who told me he's been using it for years, so we're behind the curve. So its advantages, what it eliminates, how to use it with an example, some tools you can use to actually do it, and then a recap on what we talked about. So the intended outcome of this is really getting a conversation going between the whole team. Your QA, your devs or developers, and your product owners. So it improves collaboration, as you see here, to gain a better understanding of what you're actually building and how you want to build. It reduces bugs, which in turn gives you happier teams, because the developers aren't getting their code constantly back saying, look, there's a bug here, there's a bug there. The testers don't have to keep retesting the developer's code, and the POs get their stories done faster, quicker. Actually, just out of curiosity, is everyone familiar with Scrum or any other agile methodology? Yeah, a lot of people know of it. Cool, that's good, because this goes hand in hand with Scrum. It's not a replacement for it. It's an add-on. It's like the icing on the cake, I find. So what BDD actually stands for is Behaviour Driven Development. So what is Behaviour Driven Development? So like I said, like Scrum, like if you're doing stand-ups, doesn't mean you're doing Scrum. It's a part of Scrum. And Behaviour Driven Development is a bigger methodology. So here in Distill, we're using a piece of it that works really well in conjunction with the other parts of Scrum that we're using. So it sits in nicely. So what it does is it uses example-based communication between the team. So you basically talk about what you're going to build, how it's going to behave when it's built, and that will eliminate a lot of your bugs. So how you actually do it, then you have, it's a collaboration tool, which means we have this term called the 3 amigos. So you get your developer, your QA. If anyone doesn't know what QA stands for, it means quality assurance, and POs, which is the product owner. They're the people that tell you this is what we want to build, and then discuss with everyone as in how we're going to build it. So the 3 amigos, or the power of 3, is another term for the same thing, and it's a specification tool, which means you create the spec by the example of how you want it to behave, and that creates your spec. And it's also living documentation of the software. So sorry about these text heavy slides. It's very hard to kind of condense it to make it bullet points. And also I forget something if it's not written down. So there's a few key points I want to cover. So the beauty of this, right, it's really easy to estimate how big a card is or a story. So when someone comes with a feature, say it's an epic. So let's say a massive feature like, let's place an ad. You break that down into smaller stories and say, right, we'll upload a photo, could be one story, or we'll add the text and so on. We'll publish it to the website. They're all different features or stories. So if you try to do BDD on a story, and it turns out that this thing is getting out of hand, it's getting too big, that means, right, this piece of software is too big. We have to split the cards in half and do them in separate chunks and take it from there. So it identifies if you're trying to bite off too much of the I don't know, cake or whatever. So it minimizes bugs before development starts, because you can actually see the behavior before you write one line of code. And like I said earlier, if you're doing that at the start, it's only $100 versus $10,000 in production. It's really easy to adopt because basically people having a conversation. It keeps the team or the developer on track of what they're actually supposed to be developing and not going off on a solo run and creating some new feature that no one wants. It's plain English examples, so anyone can understand it. And the beauty of this is, if someone's out sick and there's a story there with these BDD scenarios, someone else can step in and carry on with the work because it's specified there in front of them. It's not like, oh, well, Johnny's out sick, so we have to wait for 2 weeks till Johnny gets back. So it also focuses on the users and how they use the software, which is also the behavior of the software. So you have no uncertainties before development starts, because what can happen is you start working on something and a week into it, you go, oh God, I have a question here, and next of all, it's a bigger can of worms and no one has the answer to the question. So you identify everything you need before development starts. All right, and also for a product owner, when they bring the story to you to work on, they give it to you, everyone starts work on it, but they're already 2 or 3 steps ahead of you working on something else. So if you have to constantly tap them on the shoulder and say, what's the story with this, or where do we go with that? It's context switching for them. So they're taking their focus away from the zone they're in, getting back up to speed with what you're working on, giving you your answer, and then they have to get back into the zone of where they were. So there's less back and forth because it's already done up front, which speeds up delivery. And then, like I said, anyone can work on the story, even if they weren't involved in the initial discussion for the BDD. And then scenarios are used for each test case. So it's a case of successful login, unsuccessful login, those type of scenarios. And also, it doesn't impose how the developer or the QA actually write the code. It's just a guide to follow. So the useful parts of it, you're probably all familiar with the word ambiguous. It means not clear or decided. And the English language by nature is very ambiguous, because I could read a sentence and get a different interpretation from someone else here in the room. It's kind of like Chinese whisper in a sense. So here's a perfect example of it, right? Time to eat children. So here, a simple comma would have saved those kids' lives, right? And here is those 2 sentences, and like, there's not even any word changes there. It's just 1 comma, and there's 2 totally different meanings to that phrase. So that's kind of an example of how ambiguous the English language can be. So what are we trying to avoid? I'll just give you a second to look at that. Can you see that okay? This is basically before people get working on something, how it's explained to the other person who interpreted it from another person. So it's a bit crazy. So one of the things I love here is how the marketing team advertises, which is brilliant. But you'll even see here, right, the very first slide, which is how the customer explained it, right? And down here is what the customer really needed. Like, they're 2 perfect examples of even the customer doesn't know exactly what they want or how they want it. So this is what we're trying to avoid with BDD. So I'm probably repeating myself a lot here because I was writing down stuff and making sure I captured it all, and some of it overlaps. So the reasons we should use it is it improves communication, which is crucial, identifies key scenarios, eradicates the ambiguities, as I've already mentioned. So before you start on something, you know exactly what you have to do before the development starts, and that's the key here. And each scenario then can be used as acceptance criteria in your acceptance tests later on in the day. Now, we're kind of doing that here. I'll tell you more about that later on. So it defines the behavior of the feature and how it should work. And it's part of the definition it done for us. We cannot start a story unless the BDD scenarios have been covered. Minimizes waste because there's less back and forth between QA and the developers. And this is more or less saying it stops someone going off on a solo run and developing something that no one really wanted or cared about. And also, again, eliminates scope creep, which is the same thing. So again, you have to do X, but the person goes off and does Y and Z on top of X. There's no need for it, but you know, you can get kind of blindsided and get tunnel vision sometimes when you're working. So this, are you guys familiar with the rabbit hole? Basically, if you're going down the rabbit hole, you're just going nowhere fast. And 3 days later, you've nothing to show for what you've done because you've kept getting sidetracked. And I think this video describes it perfect.
Replace that light bulb in the kitchen?
What does it look like I'm doing?
I don't know about you guys, but that's me. I need to stick to the script or I'm in trouble. So, right. So when I came to Distill, right, are you guys familiar with the as a I want so that? So for example, as a Daft user, I want to be able to log in so that I can avail of the user account features. Is how you generally start a story. So it gives who's the user, what they want to do, what's the benefit. And then you have your acceptance criteria here. So this is right, when the user logs in, you can't put any invalid characters in the email address, all these kind of various different things. So when I came here, after using BDD for so long, I was given a story to this format and I said, right, work on that. And I said, I can't. And they're there, well, what do you mean you can't? I said, I don't know what to do. Like, and I said, well, it's all written there. And I said, yeah, but I have loads of questions about this because I don't know how you want this to behave. And he said, what do you mean? So we talked about it and like simple little things like when you log in, where are you redirected to? Also, how do you even get to the login page? Do you know, loads of different questions. So I said, look, can we please try BDD? And they said, right, we'll give it a shot for a few stories and see how it goes. And it turned out to be a success. So what I was saying to the guys is this format that they had is 90% of what you need. So all I was suggesting was, if you see now what happens, this existing format plus BDD, right? So you can see there, it's all it's added is this given when then scenario, right? And I'll talk more about that now with an example. So I had a specific distilled or daft story, but it was a bit bland or something to try and get the point across. So I said, right, everybody knows Amazon. Everybody knows how you use Amazon. So I came up with this story, right, for free shipping example, right? So what I said was, remember back in the day, there was no free shipping. And if there was free shipping, you had to have a UK address or something like that. And it's still the case now with some things. You have to get Parcel Motel to get the free shipping, to get it sent on to you and so on. So I said, right, as an Amazon customer, I want to avail of free shipping so that I can save money while shopping on Amazon. So there's our acceptance criteria, or there's our story. So the acceptance criteria is the customer gets free shipping when they spend over £25 and their shipping address is in the UK. Right, so how you would start this is, right, you're given a scenario, which is the user wants to get free shipping basically. So what you have then is your when. So this is when something happens. Then the user has free shipping. All right, so what we do is we get this criteria, we get into a room together and talk about it, and it's amazing. Like, that's fairly basic, but once you start talking about this, there's so many variables that can come into play that I didn't think of, that someone here might think of, and so on. And before you know it, then you have a bug-free code, right? So yeah, I more or less told you this a second ago. POs, right? POs come with the story, which is what we just had. So a lot of people think that this is going to be a big time black hole, because people are under pressure anyway to get what they need to do done within a 2-week cycle. We work on 2-week sprint cycles here in Distilled. But if you invest even a half an hour up front, you'll save that like tenfold at the end of a sprint, because at the end of your sprint, when you have to deliver something and there's bugs being found, you're not going to deliver on time, and it just sets everyone back. So a small little time investment up front, it's not big, and the more you do it, the better you get at it, so it gets quicker. So you just need a little bit of a time investment up front. So what you do is you get your power of 3 or 3 amigos, which will be, like I said, your PO, QA, dev. But if there is no QA in the room, grab someone else. They can stand in as QA or whoever. Do you know what I mean? Just swap it up so that you have enough people to talk about it. So the PO tells you what the functionality should be. The dev says, right, here's how I think we should build it, and any issues you might see. And the QA then pokes holes in it and says, well, what if this happens? So we cover this scenario. And after a while, then you have this bulletproof set of requirements, well, almost bulletproof. So you write down some examples about how you want this to work and what scenarios to cover. Like I said, with this one, this would be free shipping or no free shipping. They're your kind of 2 main scenarios, a happy path and an unhappy path. So shopping cart value and shipping address meet the criteria is the happy path. And the unhappy path then would be the shopping cart and or shipping address does not meet the criteria. And then you have some edge cases then that could be thrown into the mix, which is Amazon Prime users. How would they be affected? And so on. They're just quick things I come up with. That's nice. So again, here is what you'd start off with. So we'll have a chat anyway, saying, right, so what do we really want? What's the given here? What's the scenario? Say, given a customer has 4 items in their shopping cart. Happy days. Now, I'm taking this from the point of view that the behavior is done by adding an item to a shopping cart, or all the kind of existing software is in place at this point. So we're just focusing on the new behavior that we want. There's no need to rewrite the wheel, or what was that? Reinvent the wheel, sorry. Right. So, right, given the customer has 4 items in the shopping cart, right? So what we need now is a when. So when the total value of all items is greater than £25, right, that's the start. They're on their way to qualifying for free shipping. And then you can also append onto a given when or a then with ands. So if there's something else that needs to happen, you can add an and to that. So, and their shipping address is within the UK, then their shipping cost will be £0. So you can see it is actually pretty straightforward. Now, getting your head around getting into this and getting the start on it can be a little bit tricky, but once you do it over and over, you start to get the hang of it fairly quick. So I talked mostly here about the methodology and the scenarios and what people talk about. Now, when I worked in Paddy Power, our QA team were like expert gamblers, should I say? Like, like they were brilliant. Like they could spot a price change among hundreds of prices in a match. If they saw a price going astray, they'd spot it like that, and the noise like, right, that's not right. Why did that happen? So our QA team looked at that kind of domain knowledge side of things, and then it came back to us because we wrote the code, we wrote our acceptance tests, we wrote our unit tests, which kind of, it's not really the norm for like a front end team to write all that. But like I said, these guys were experts in that field, so we kind of looked after this based on the feedback we got from them. So when I was in Paddy Power, this is kind of a acceptance or a behavior driven development test that we would have written, which would be an acceptance test. So you can actually see here, right? So the scenario is Amazon free shipping, right? So like I had here previously, you're giving the customer when this and then that. So given a customer has 4 items in the shopping cart. So this is just a bit of code to actually grab the items element on the page, get the value from it, and put it into this variable. So what we do now is we'd expect, all I'm doing here, this is like a piece of text, so we're just taking the number out. So I expect the number of items to equal 4, right? So that's the first part of the test after being passed, if it passes, if that's the way it is in the UI. So when the total value of all items is greater than £25, so again, you're getting the subtotal, getting the value of the subtotal, and expecting it to be greater than £25. Happy days, move on. And the shipping address is within the UK. So your address, which is country, get the value of that. If it matches UK, the test keeps going. and then your shipping cost will be £0. So right at the very end here, you're getting the shipping cost, the value of it, and making sure that your expected shipping cost is equal to 0. So you're basically saying, this is what I expect this to be at any one time. And if that all works, your behavior is right and your test passes. So you can use these scenarios as your test cases. And like I said, here we do, but we don't write them in this syntax, in this format. We let the QA team do what they need to do. So that's why we're saying, by doing this, you're not imposing how this has to be done. It's just a blueprint for everyone on the team to work off, so that everyone's working to the same set of plans, basically. So I built upon the Amazon example just for the crack to see kind of how much logic you can actually fit into this. And this can keep going and going. And the thing is, if you have this written, when you come back, then you can also add more logic as more features come on board to adapt. So it's living documentation of how your software will work. So again, given the customer has 4 items in their shopping cart, when the total value of the items is less than £25 and their shipping address is within the UK. So, right, so they didn't meet the value criteria there. So their shipping cost is going to be £6.99 because they're less than £25. So when they add one more item to their shopping cart and the total value is now greater than £25, then their shipping address, and their shipping address is still within the UK. Now their shipping cost will be 0. So that's shown by adding one more thing to the cart, the value changes, and now they're eligible for free shipping. So then, just to change it up here, because people in Ireland do this a lot, the flip-flop between UK and Irish addresses. So when the customer changes their shipping address to a non-UK address, i.e. Ireland, then their shipping cost will be £9.99. So that's showing the behavior in a full circle of going from not having it free, getting it free, and now it's gone back to £9.99. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, really. So yeah, so things to note with this, I suppose, it gets faster as you practice. Like we're able to knock out 4 or 5 stories per session now, which is great. Going from at the start maybe 1 story per session because no one was really that familiar with it. So we're getting on top of it now. There's no it's a good one. There's no exact, correct, or textbook way to do this. Like if someone walks in here now and says, no, that's wrong, I say, no, you're wrong. This is what works for us. This is how we do it. Do you know what I mean? This works for us. So we're doing it as best we can because it's like guidelines. Again, it's plain English, like, so you can't be right or wrong with your plain English as long as it's working for the team. So if anyone walks into a room and says, listen, I'm after pre-writing the given when ends, and gives you basically something like that, says this is what we're going to do, just press delete, just get rid of it, because there was no conversation. You look at it and you go, yeah, that looks all right, we'll run with that. And next of all, you start finding issues that they never thought of, because it's the conversation you need to happen in order to expose all these potential bugs. So, oh yeah, as you're writing your given when ends, it's tricky to get a start on, but as you're working through them and you realize you put in a when that should have been a then, don't worry about it. You can go back and change it. It's not like once you write it, set in stone. No, there's no going back, lads. It's like modify it to suit, because like I said, it's a discussion. It'll keep evolving over the course of the discussion, or else once you've done one story, you might move on to something else that's similar, and there's a condition in that then that you didn't think about in the previous one, so you can also go back and update that based on it. So it's a good way to catch them on. So yeah, so your scenarios, right? I talked about that from probably a front end point of view. For anyone that doesn't know what front end means, is what you actually see on the screen: your shopping cart, your items, your subtotal. There's a lot of magic that happens behind the scenes in the back end. With once I change something on the front, it goes to the back process it and send the information back to me, and I render it. Basically, that's the way it works. So even though it seems to be very front end heavy, like the back end should be able to work off the same set of requirements. The back end and the front end should both be able to work off the same set of requirements, because it's pretty ambiguous in the sense it's not defined that when I'm on the front end and I click on this item, it's when the cart is updated. So that happens in the back end and gets sent to the front. So everyone should be able to work off the same given when ends. So some tools and frameworks for this. I didn't go too deep into the actual code side of this, because there's, with the different framework or the different languages, there's different frameworks, there's different tools. But from what I was used to, you had Jasmine, which Jasmine gives you, see this describer and this it, like that's like a testing framework. So within that testing framework, then you tell it what to do. Jasmine gives you all of that out of the box. So you kind of, it's an all-in-one kind of Swiss Army knife of, now this is JavaScript as well, actually, these tools. Whereas you have Mocha, that just kind of gives you a test framework, but it doesn't give you your, see this, expect this to be this, doesn't give you that. So with Mocha, then that's kind of like a fairly loose one that lets you do use what you want to use within it. So Chai is another JavaScript framework that allows you to use that. That's the expect part of it. So you can either go with an all-out solution, use theirs, or pick and choose your own things that you like and you want to work with. So what Protractor does is it actually gets those assertions, opens up a version of Google Chrome, and actually clicks around like a user would click around, and it injects them into either Chrome or Phantom. Now, when we were using Phantom.js, what was happening up in Paddy Power was we were developing in Chrome, everything was rosy. Tests would pass, everything would be great. Once it went onto the pipeline, what a pipeline is when we commit our code, a suite of tests are triggered, and this all happens in the background. And if they all pass, then this piece of code gets released to production. So what was happening, we were using Chrome locally, and we were using Phantom on the pipeline. And how Phantom and Chrome rendered something could be slightly different. And that's when you were getting little unknown errors. So we got rid of Phantom and we used Chrome on the pipeline as well. And then there's these two, sign on and simple spy. Basically, if you have a function that makes a call, if you don't actually have anything for it to call to, but you just want to see if the function fired, you can put a watcher on it. And if that fires, then you can say, expect this function to have been called once. So it doesn't actually do anything. It just acts like a fake function, essentially. So I threw together a little sheet. It's a little text heavy. But basically, if you want to get in on this, have your requirements ready. Like I said, your I want, so that. Grab the few people that you need, get into a room, have a conversation, figure out the scenarios that you need to cover. Like I said, have the conversation. That's the key part of this. It's crucial. And if you need to draw out some like logic on a whiteboard, do it just so you can kind of visualize. It's a lot easier to visualize something than this to talk about. And don't be afraid to change the scenarios after you've written them, because you can't just stick to what you've already written. This is a good one. Give it a chance and have patience, because it can be a little bit painful, but it's well worth the pain in the long run, and it gets quicker as time goes by. Yeah, so if your scenarios are like huge, getting out of hand, consider splitting the story, because you'll get the two smaller pieces over the line quicker than one big monster. And then basically remember, your given is a certain scenario, your when is what the action is, and then this should be the outcome of the action. So to recap on that, then I suppose it was the intended outcome, which you covered, what BDD is, its advantages, what it eliminates, the tools that you can use. Like I said, we don't. Well, we do in a way. The lads do what they do, I do what I do, and it all comes together. And then how to use it with an example. So that's it. And Sean actually gave me a hand with this. When Sean actually, he's their QA lead. He when I came to the company, I was banging on about BDD, and Barry said to me, "Here, talk to Sean. Like, he's been looking at that for a while." So I think Sean was a bit apprehensive that we'd be imposing how he has to write his tests. But after having a chat, we came to the agreement that we do the scenarios in the meeting. After that, you do what you want, I do what I want, as long as everyone's working from the same blueprints. Happy days. So that's the agreement we came to. So thanks, Sean, even though he's not here. That's it. That's me. Any questions?